Hey everyone, so I'm sitting with the most influential artist of the 21st century, Rucka Ali.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Good, man.
Good.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about, presumably, Objectivism. So how did you find yourself coming to it?
I guess when I was 15, I read The Fountainhead, which before that I was like the early 2000s version of SJW. I was,
Really?
just radically negative, anti-values, just hated everything. Which is why I understand these guys so well. Not that I don't know. There's a lot to go into there, I guess. But yeah, I was like radically environmentalist, radically just sympathetic to communism, sympathetic to just really every type of authoritarianism. Because ultimately, these guys are just anti-values.
Yeah.
And that's what I was. Just because like there was just kind of a big vacuum that was being filled by all this negativity. And, at some point I came across The Fountainhead, and I couldn't believe anyone was this cool. Like, I couldn't believe anyone could write something this badass. I'd never met an adult that hadn't compromised on anything, who was just like, nope, here it is, 100%. A novel about just a complete and total independent thinker who creates stuff, who acts and does things his own way, and to me that just really kind of set me down a different path in life, I think, which ultimately led me to where I am today.
It must have been a huge leap in your paradigm, though, to go from being a communist sympathizer to being a Randian objectivist.
Well, I don't know if I was, communist sympathizer. I think most people today, contemporary people, are in some way communist sympathizers, in that they see the communists as having the moral high ground. They say, oh, it doesn't work on practical grounds. But ultimately, wouldn't
it be nice if
be nice if it's too bad, we can't make that work. So I wouldn't say communist sympathy was my main the main focus of what I believed at the time. I was just very I just kind of saw all human activity as negative, which is the environmentalist main point of view today. As much as they try to brand it as, oh no, we're looking out for the future, it really is ultimately these guys they just hate capitalism more than they care about their grandchildren. And I was just anti-human, because the way I understood the world, you had, what they taught me about the ecosystem, how there's this perfect web of activity in nature, and every animal does exactly what it ought to, that it feeds into the next animal's diet, and everyone builds upon each other. And then you've got modern man. You ever listen to Bad Religion?
Oh yeah.
Modern man, and that against the grain, that whole, it's just like modern man, evolutionary betrayer. Here comes along this reckless jerk who just starts burning it all to the ground and fucks over all the other animals, and just spends all his time destroying himself, and all of human history is just a shit stain on the universe. And
Jesus Christ,
that's the way I saw it, and in a weird way, that was where my inspiration came from, and that was the kind of art I wanted to create. Just pointing out these things. But there's a lot missing from that point of view, because. As I later came to understand and think, what is human nature, right? Every animal has its nature, right? The plant, every living thing has its nature. The plant, it automatically kind of grows towards the sun or whatever it needs to do to live. Yeah. The bears feed their cubs, and they hunt, or whatever it is they do to live. I'm not much of a zoologist, I guess. So the guy from Bad Religion actually has one up on me in that regard, because he's a PhD in zoology. But so what's human nature? How do we live? We're not strong. We're not fast. The strongest person on Earth can't survive up against even a chimpanzee. A chimp is way faster and stronger than him. So what do we do? How do we live?
Cooperatively.
Right, but before we cooperate, how do we survive? How do we know what to cooperate on? How do we even know what cooperation is?
Well, you tell me. What do you think?
With our mind is our tool, right?
Oh yeah.
It's not physical strength.
It's our only advantage.
It's our only advantage. But it's a hell of an advantage if we use it right. So we can create tools. We can take on even if the dinosaurs were still around, we can take them on now. We can eat the most dangerous animals, we can comfortably order
lion steak.
a lion steak.
I'm down for it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've tamed the wild beast.
Yeah.
So that's human nature. We need to think to live. We need to think to survive. Then we need to think to produce. So yeah, I kind of I wouldn't say I came to understand all that at age 15, 16, but I kind of realized when
that was the path you were on. Right?
Yeah, there's a part of the Fountainhead when the main character, he's in court, and I think you'd find this book really inspiring as a content creator, he starts his speech by going, he goes, thousands of years ago, somebody invented fire, and he was probably burnt at the stake that he showed his brothers how to light. And I just remember putting down the book right then and going like, everything is about to change. Holy shit. And,
Yeah. No, this is interesting, actually, because that's very reminiscent of something Rousseau said. The first man who staked out an area of property and said, this is mine and not yours. Rousseau laments that the rest didn't just tear it up and burn him as a heretic or whatever. But, I mean, if they had, we'd still be roaming around the plains.
I mean,
the fear of, depredation of lions and bears and whatnot. It was better for mankind to do something rather than to not.
Well, it's the only way is to do something. The only way for us to live, to survive for very long, and to live happy lives, productive lives, independently pursuing values, is to have property. Autonomy over your body and whatever property you acquire and produce if you don't do it by violating somebody else. And Rousseau, full disclosure, I haven't read, or I've tried to read a lot of different things, but I've had a very hard time reading people like Rousseau and Kant, so you may hear me refer to them and what they've said, but this is just full disclosure based on what I've heard other people say about them. And if anyone thinks I'm misrepresenting what they've said, by all means, put
it in the comments.
Put it in the comments, or if you think that any objectivist commentator has misrepresented what, for instance, Kant has said, that's not on me. Make that point. By all means, all these ideas are open to scrutiny by nature.
There is a big debate about that, but I'm sure you already know.
So what is the debate?
I was speaking to Gary Edwards, actually. He thought that Kant was defending reason rather than attacking it. But I was looking. I'm going to do a review of or an analysis of the ominous parallels, and I found Will Durant was a historian in 1913 or something who wrote a series of works on this, and he seems to think that Kant was attacking reason as well. So it's something I'm going to look into more because I haven't got to the end of the train of investigation.
Well, by the way, I think I just noticed I'm like out of the shot this whole time. I mean, we could.
Sorry, yeah.
No, I just want to make sure I'm. So hold on. Let's get nice and close. By the way, if there's a Mrs. Avocado out there, I just want to say what things happen in Oakland, and
it stays in Oakland.
It stays in Oakland. Look, I mean, my understanding is that Kant, he said that there's a noumenal world. Mm-hmm. It's a different. We can't know it. We can't know anything about it. But that's the real world. So he was carrying on Plato's tradition, whatever, right?
Yes.
So in both cases,
Peikoff traces Plato, Kant, Hegel, and then the disaster that is the modern world.
So how can you say you're defending reason, or how can someone say that Kant is defending reason when he says that reason doesn't find us truth? We can't use reason to know the truth. The truth is out there. We can't know it. And then what happens with the philosophers after him, or with the movements after him? They say, well, since we can't really know anything, how do we know what to do? How do we know anything, or how do we know where to act? We turn either to your, quote, instinct, your intrinsic knowledge, which means nothing at all, emotion, or alternatively, you turn to the tribe, you turn to the Führer, you turn to the proletariat, you turn to. It's always somebody other than yourself, and
you turn to Hegel's world spirit, whatever manifestation it has, right?
Right, so, I mean, I'm a little bit out of my league, and as I'm sure your comment section will point out, I'm way out of my element even really talking about this stuff, but that's just my understanding of these things. And if you get a lot of these guys talking long enough, they're just anti-reason. They're anti-individual reason, and reason is an individualistic thing.
Reason is man's greatest power. These people are directly opposed to the idea.
Right.
They don't like it at all. And I assume that it's still recording, even though my laptop screen just went off.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I just don't want to keep going out of the shot. Even.
Sorry, man.
No.
I'm the least professional podcaster in the
No, man. This is 2017, 2018. This is the way of the future.
Production values are a thing of the past.
Mm-hmm. So you enjoyed the book? Is that?
I did. It was. I think it was. I think it's a. So like for anyone who hasn't read it, 90% of it is Peikoff, who is a doctor of philosophy. So it's he's he spent his entire career as a philosopher. He's got a doctorate in it. So even if you're not an objectivist, there is a great deal of value to be gained from it, because he spends a lot of time charting the philosophical structures of the philosophies involved, even if he doesn't agree with them. I think he is accurately representing them, at least to the degree that I've investigated it and found that there are other people who I respect who have confirmed, this is a thing. It's like I said, it's something I'm gonna have to look into more. And he spends a lot of time charting like the intellectual development. And he had one phrase that really rang with me, that it resonated. He was like, "Ideas are the motor of history," and that is a great phrase, because I'm so sick of people just dismissing the fact that the things people think are the reason that they do anything. And so many people, I mean, the regressive left will do this with Islam all the time. It's the drone strikes in the in Pakistan, and then you have like the Islamic State's magazine directly addressing this argument, saying no, even if you stop drone striking, even if you leave us alone completely, we will still hate you. We are still compelled to fight you because you are not Muslims. And so you can't get away from the fact that idea is going to forever inspire terrorism.
Yeah, but yes, and that's the improv. You say yes, and you don't just contradict. But there's a lot there. But first of all, not every individual person is driven by ideas, and what I mean is a lot of people, they just kind of follow what they see people do.
Yeah, I was speaking of intellectual trends.
What shapes a culture is the ideas of the intellect. You can trace it back to the intellectuals, the religious leaders, which of course are in their own way intellectual. The thinkers, the people who do think about ideas, the conclusions they arrive on end up spilling over into the culture, which shapes the culture, which shapes politics as well. Politics, they say is downstream from culture.
There would be no point having intellectuals and academics and public debates if these things didn't influence people.
Well, some people think there is no point because they do see.
Well, they do. You're right.
Yeah. They see. So you said, well, the people are driven by Islam, right? And then others say,
some people, obviously.
Right, and then others say, no, that's not it. It's their conditions. It's whatever it is that causes them to behave they do. Whatever.
Leaders are driven by ideas. Mm-hmm. Followers are driven by conditions, I think.
But my main thing is not so much to argue that we need to argue about what drives Pakistanis to blow shit up, but what do we have in return to respond to that? And when we're living in a culture where you've got guys like Brett Weinstein, the current golden boy, the current trophy of the free speech movement, he believes that culture is biological.
Does he?
I heard him say that, and he's not alone in that. I mean,
the alt-right think that.
The alt-right and the left and everyone in between seems to think that. I mean, you mentioned Peterson earlier at lunch. Does he believe we're kind of basically fully biological?
I don't think so. I mean, I've not heard him cover it, but I would be surprised if that fit in with his world philosophy.
I mean, the prevailing kind of view of people is that we're shaped by biology, whether it's IQ, it's our genes, it's or even people say we're products of our environment, but our culture at large is biological, right? Like, I mean, you hear this everywhere. Dr. Drew, the addiction specialist, the guy who has spent his career watching drug addicts take matters into their hands and follow instructions and make choices that would lead them to sobriety. A nearly impossible feat. Even he talks about culture as in, like, why did we evolve this way? And you see this shit everywhere. You see people talk about the German gene, it's like, dude, I mean, you can have someone who lives in Syria under ISIS, growing up in an ISIS household, turn out one way, and then you can pluck somebody out of Syria, drop him off in America, as was done with Steve Jobs, who's an adopted Syrian, and goes on to create Apple. Same genetics, right?
Well,
no different stage of evolution there. Just the one grew up in an enlightened culture, a relatively far enlightened culture of of both reason as well as capitalism, goes on to create Apple. Even if in Steve Jobs' own convictions, he was far from perfectly reasonable or perfectly champion of capitalism. Even so, his implicit convictions, I mean, the things he didn't even realize he was championing, led him to create the biggest company on earth. Whereas his cousins back in Syria were living not that much differently than, fucking cavemen in some regards.
See, this is actually really interesting, and this is something that I asked Jared Taylor, because he's one of those people who believes that.
Yeah, I saw biology, that. I saw that. Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to get him to explain to me why Northern Europeans are so different. I mean, you can go back 500 years, and they're completely different culturally. Mm-hmm. Go back another 1,000 years, utterly different, and go back 500 years before that, and they don't even have writing. They don't, they're terrible at metalwork. They've got bad writing. They can't write. And the culture is just completely different. And so why is the culture so different if the genetics are basically the same? Because, I mean, Britain is a great example. 83%, I think it is, of the British, the genes in Britain were there since the Ice Age. Mm-hmm. But the culture is completely different. We're no longer doing anything. There are no stone circle builders, there are no druids, there are no, Anglo-Saxons in the cultural sense. I think environment and events shape culture. This is why, for example, in Arabia, they force women to dress and cover themselves completely. It's not because there is a genetic need to make these women cover themselves. It's an ideology. It's the cultural milieu they've grown up in. They think that's normal, and they think that's right. And if you were to take an Arab child, mm-hmm. raise them in Britain, they're not going to think that's normal. It's a completely different culture, and they're going to adopt it. They're going to be, soaked in it. It's not genetic. And if it is genetic, it's certainly not deterministic.
Right. Even, I mean, listen, genes do exist, right? Like, some people are going to be better at basketball. Some are going to be more intellectual than others. Some are going to be better at math. Some are going to be more kind of just overall cerebral.
And there are going to be average differences among population groups.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, by all means, if you happen to be born Chinese, be happy that you're good at math. Don't fucking try to run from it and say, oh no, that black guy over there would be just as good at math if he was raised by my parents. It's like, no, you're a bad driver and you're good at math. Just fucking take it. Just fucking run with it.
But culturally, that doesn't mean that you would be culturally Chinese if you were raised in South America.
Or that your actions are predetermined. See, that's the thing, too. We live in the most racist time, because virtually everybody thinks that you're...
Let's not say that, because people will be instantly like, hang on. Like, 100 years ago, everyone was actually a racist. And they were like racial determinists.
Okay.
So we're not the most racist, but we've definitely regressed.
We're living at a time. We're living at a time when we should know better, because we've seen people. We've got a country where people of all different walks of life are taking their matters into their own hands, mm-hmm. and living the life that they want. But we still kind of cling on to this idea that your actions are determined by your identity.
Yeah.
And you see this shit everywhere. So, I mean, there's a lot wrong with the Jared Taylor interview. I mean, he brought up that you love your child. A man loves his child. That, therefore, a man also loves his race. I mean, I don't know. A man loving his child, to me, is a symbol of individual values, right? Like, sure. That's something that's so personal to you.
Connection. But I've got no personal connection to someone who lives in the north of England, for example.
Right.
I haven't got any personal connection to someone who lives in the next town over to me. And it's not a familial relationship by any stretch of the imagination. At best, it's going to be shared cultural values. Mm-hmm. For example, if you're on holiday and you meet someone from the same country, you can have a conversation, you have a beer and you chat and get to know each other. But it's only because you've got shared cultural values, you've got shared language, you've got shared customs. You're not sitting there thinking, right, they're the same race as me. What if they don't speak your language?
Look, even if you do kind of identify more with people that are the same race, for whatever reason, like, again, the question that ultimately it boils down to is, do you believe people have free will? Do you think their actions are predetermined or not? Because I say they're not predetermined. You do have free will. And we live in a time when the existence of free will is very much either in question or completely dismissed, both by psychologists and thinkers in every department. And predetermination is wildly kind of entertained, if not completely accepted. So,
I don't know how widespread it is, but there are definitely people who are like that. I find that disturbing because I think even if let's assume that there is no free will, it is all predetermined. I think there's still a lot of value in the idea that it's not, because if you tell people, oh, everything's predetermined, so don't do anything, people aren't going to do anything, and that's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're going to be like, well, what can I do? Everything's already determined for me. I may as well not try.
Yeah.
And this is like the sort of quest for objectivity. The regressive left will tell you, oh, well, there is no perfect objectivity, so we should just content to be subjective. And it's like, yeah, but that's taking the path of least resistance. The value is not in actually being objective, but in trying to be objective. It's the journey rather than the destination. Because if you try your hardest to be as objective as you possibly can, you will produce a better content of, say, a quality of journalism than if you were to just go, you know what, I embrace my subjectivity, I embrace my irrationalism, fuck it all, and you're going to become a partisan propagandist who has absolutely no value to their product.
I mean, yeah, look, if you don't believe people have the power to make choices and to do things, you will end up in many cases just doing nothing with your life, which is what a lot of people do, and that's kind of the generation we live in. And I mean, from what I understand, that might have been Sargon, 2012.
It might have been, yeah. I've always been confident in my ability to make my own decisions, and my actions have an effect on the world. I just didn't really have anything I particularly wanted to do. I was just happy indulging in my own pastimes, really.
Yeah.
It's
well, that's great. I guess I'm just speaking broadly about what I'm kind of disillusioned with this whole generation. I know that sounds really condescending, but
there is the millennials need to wake up.
It's millennials and it's whatever the fuck generation XYZ. It's like, what the fuck? It's like everyone just lives on the internet and just argues. It's like culture now is just who's winning the internet fight.
Well, hang on now. Let's not dismiss that, because we just agreed that ideas are important.
Yeah.
And the internet is the giant forum of the exchange of ideas.
That's true.
So we shouldn't dismiss it or downplay it. I think that these things are important because, like we were saying, I think the leaders of movements are definitely, they're very much driven by ideas, and the people who are attracted to leaders, the sort of people, and this isn't I'm not trying to denigrate someone by saying you're a follower, because that sounds like you're a lesser person or something, but it's not, because most people are followers, most people aren't leaders, and that's okay. Most people have got other things they want to do in their lives, but they still want to subscribe to a worldview, a philosophy, an ideology, and a movement. People want to be part of something, and that's completely normal. But these people aren't the thought leaders. The thought leaders themselves are the ones influencing them with their ideas. So, and whatever makes someone want to follow something might not necessarily be the ideas themselves. It might be something about the person, or the general concept that they haven't necessarily drilled down into deeply, but the thought leaders do, and that's why they follow them. That's the point of it.
Well,
so I don't think we should downplay the importance of the exchange of ideas on the internet. It's become ferocious.
I guess what I was getting at is just that this phenomenon of people that have no desire to ever leave the house, who are playing video games and smoking weed their whole life away. But they have this desire to argue about ideas over the internet. It's like, well, who cares? Like, who cares if men or women are better than the other? It's like, you're never actually going to sleep with one, so who fucking cares? I mean, anyway.
Well, it matters now, because even if it's silly things like bathrooms and things like that. I mean, it does end up seeping into the real world. So.
Right. Well, okay. Anyway, this is I mean, it's fascinating. I don't want to just rip on this straw man gamer, but I just find it really interesting. I mean,
there are certainly people like you're describing that.
Well, like the last time you were in LA, you mentioned that you were like, "Why is this happening to me?" Because the whole Anita Sarkeesian thing. You're like, "Oh, I just wanted to smoke weed," and and I kind of integrated that into the song that I wrote about you, where like you're face to face with her, and you're like, "I just wanted to play video games." Why'd you have to come after my video games? And that's my understanding is listen, this now I remember what I was even bringing this up for. Like.
True, though.
Everything you guys rail against, all you anti-SJWs, all that, you hate the Young Turks, you hate fucking identity politics, supposedly you hate it, even if I would say you kind of take part of it in your own way.
We do not.
Okay, we'll get to that.
But, we'll get to that.
But, You guys were all fucking on board with this shit till they came after your video games. I swear to God, I hated the Young Turks 10 years ago. I fucking hated them.
You were hating the Young Turks before it was cool.
Long before it was cool. I don't like these guys were such smug assholes. They're the most unlikable people on earth. I hated them. And they made me never want to watch anything on YouTube. I was like, if this shit exists, like, then watching YouTube is not going to do anything for my positive outlook of the world. And all the fucking, neckbeard fucking gamers of the world were fucking watching this shit. The Young Turks were calling everyone racist that disagreed with them. Anyone who wasn't on board with Barack Obama was a racist. Anyone... just everyone was sexist, racist, everyone's a fucking homophobe, and then what happens? They come after your video games. Next thing you know, you guys are all Jeffersonian Democrats, you all want a free society, you want to fucking scrutinize every idea and arrive at truth. And look, I mean, if this does turn out to be a historical fucking Renaissance Part 2, that would be a beautiful thing. It's just, I can't help but be a little bit cynical when I see this whole generation that were completely on board with all this SJW shit up until they came after your games.
I don't think being on board with it is really the term I'd use. I think being permissive of it is what you mean.
You were watching it, you were rooting for it.
It was never... I mean, maybe I just didn't notice, but I'm sure they've got worse as the years have gone on. You don't think so?
No.
No? Maybe you're just more sensitive to it than we were.
Well, bad shit gets worse.
Yeah.
But they were shit.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose, I think you've probably got to forgive people for not taking action they don't have to take.
I'm a very forgiving soul. But
you don't sound like it.
No, I'm a very forgiving and compassionate person. That's why I reach out to the world every day and say, don't disappoint me today. Don't disappoint me.
By the way, there are fat, violent dykes out there.
Yeah.
I love that song.
Thanks, man. So, yeah, I'd like to hear, how did you know who I am? Like, it's always weird to me when anyone's even heard of me.
Just through culture, just through your music. You know? Like, they're funny songs. They get spread around.
Cool. I mean, my fan base was traditionally kind of more teenage. Yeah. You're a little older than me.
Oh, so. Yeah, but I've got a childish sense of humor.
Sure.
I enjoy it. I don't care.
Good.
The thing, I don't think you can begrudge people from an objective standpoint, pursuing their own interests, being selfish from the objectivist definition of it.
Rationally selfish.
Yeah, rationally selfish. Yeah. You're doing what you want to do, and there's no reason to apologize for that.
Right.
And the reason that I think everyone has become Jeffersonian Democrats is because suddenly now there has been an outside force that's come along and said, right, the way that you're engaging in culture and performing your culture is wrong, and we decide for you how you should act. And so you can't blame people for not really, okay, this isn't really affecting me, so I don't need to worry about this. And then suddenly, right, we're coming for your video games, we're coming for your music, we're coming for your films, we're coming for your comic books. And so suddenly they're like, well, okay, well now we have to, they're forcing our hand. And that might be a good thing to get people politically engaged because they're all voting citizens. They should be politically engaged.
Yeah, they all voted for Barack Obama. They all occupied Wall Street. Yeah, they were vigilant people. And then turns out, oh surprise, you're the enemy now. You're the fucking straight white whatever cis male who's fucking cussing people out on your video game. Congratulations, you're a Nazi. So. Look, listen, I'm not gonna hold a grudge. Let me take this opportunity to say I forgive you.
Oh, thank you.
But I'm not gonna bullshit you. I'm not gonna tell you, oh yeah, is that pursuit of values, fucking giving up on life altogether, being having bad hygiene and just fucking playing games all day?
All right, now you're getting to the straw man.
It is a straw man, I guess. But
these people still have to have jobs.
Listen, stereotypes. That's my bread and butter. You know that.
Yeah, that's true. But,
anyway, we don't want to offend anybody. We love gamers. No. By the way, you've never seen anyone triggered like gamers.
Oh, I know.
You guys all fucking exist because of that shit. Holy shit. You guys see yourselves as an oppressed minority.
We are.
Why? You're fucking playing... No, I'm not, without mentioning any names, I've seen some prominent anti-SJWs speak about gamers like a historically oppressed group of people.
Well, I mean, in a way they kind of are, but not like... It's kind of like a LARPing version of being oppressed. Like in the same way that Antifa are LARPing as revolutionaries. It's kind of true, but it's not like... it's not serious true. Like for example, like okay, you can't go on a forum and say, hey, I want more girls with big tits in my video games, because the SJW moderators will just go, no, we're taking that off. That's misogynist or whatever, right? That's a form of oppression, but it's so fucking mild.
All right,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
nothing
It's
serious.
stupid.
But
What? By the way, all you guys who hate what the gaming industry
But I
is
thought you were
doing.
down about the principles. That's the thing. It's the principle of the thing. They don't have a right to just sit there and go, you know what, we don't like what you've said, so we're going to remove it.
They literally have that right because it's their game.
Yeah, but it's the spirit of the thing and the principles that they're following. And,
I mean, look, I'm all for speaking up. It seems a little bit selective to only really care about video games and to
it's entirely selective.
Yeah, it is. But also, what was I going to say before that? I don't even remember. So I guess we'll never know.
But I totally agree with you that it's it's not important materially.
Yeah.
It's not materially.
But also,
important.
okay, this kind of brings to mind like the whole Google thing, Silicon Valley. Look, Silicon Valley is the one shining example of the type of world I would like to live in. Okay, the fact you have people, you're defensive. I see you crossing your arms.
Oh,
it's body language.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So
I'm about to start.
Silicon Valley is a place where people from all walks of life, all races, all nationalities, they come to Silicon Valley and they fucking work 22-hour days and just fucking chip away at the product they would like to create, and the progress is astronomical.
Yep.
It also happens to be the least regulated sector of the economy.
It probably is,
the tech industry in general, because
it's a frontier.
I mean, the government they can easily regulate the medical industry. They say, oh, this is important stuff. We can't just leave this up to selfish, evil businessmen. We gotta regulate the shit out of it and make it free for a bunch of people.
I do hate the assumption that all businessmen are evil. I mean,
well, let's talk about.
I was watching the other day.
But let's put a footnote on that. The
go on.
the belief that all businessmen are evil. But just about Google, real quick. Look, I don't like. Listen. Anyone who's familiar with me knows I've had my differences with YouTube, which in turn is Google. I am not always a fan of the choices they've made. Mm-hmm. But I gotta tell you, I'd like to see more people fucking create your own startup. Fucking go work at Google. Go work at YouTube. Fucking bring your own opinions into the workforce or something. Or at least advocate for even less regulation. Advocate for lower taxes, because these things are related. A freer economy is more diverse. You have, a freer. Anyway, ultimately, it needs to boil down to a philosophical conviction about, which brings us to our next point. All right, I don't know if any of that made sense.
Well, it does, right? But the reason I think this matters is, it seems that what you're doing is effectively trying to. I think you're concerned about. Over-regulation of business, right?
Or regulation of it altogether.
Or regulation of it altogether. I disagree. I think there are definitely certain basic standards of regulation that have to be met. But beyond that, beyond sort of safety measures, I don't see the need to regulate unnecessarily.
Well, the fact that you give them this much allows them to get to this much.
Well, if you're permissive of that, but this is why it's important for people to stand up and say no. This is why it's important for us, and this is what a culture war is. It's a system of values pressing against another system of values, and this is why it's important for neckbeards or comic book readers or whoever to stand up and say, no, we want to push our values at the expense of yours, because your values are coming at the expense of ours.
You guys don't know what your values are, all right?
Sure we do.
No, you don't. You believe that, it's the rich oppressing the poor, that the corporations are holding down. Aren't you anti-corporate in a lot of the things you believe?
Oh, only on a personal level. Only because of, I like being free and independent, and I like being an entrepreneur, but for a lot of people that's not the case. They want structure.
No. I'm not talking about.
No, I don't think corporations are holding people down at all.
Okay.
I think that there are times where corporate power is used inappropriately, and that would, I think, generally be called corruption.
Yeah, you mean
for example, you've got the example of United Fruit Company, who went into Guatemala and bought up 43% of the land from under the feet of the peasants who owned it, because they bought out the government.
So what's the solution to that?
Well, the government is weak and corrupt.
Yeah, there's no concept of property rights. So those peasants they're basically treated like dominoes. Yeah.
And it would be up to the peasants to resist the government. You know, this is the thing. The United Fruit Company, corporations are always going to try and do something if they can.
Look, what companies do in third world countries can be a highly uncomfortable topic, but I would ultimately say the fault lies with the fact that those regions don't have individual rights of their citizens.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, but let's.
Totally agree. They should have stood up to the government, allowing them to say, "Look, you're being corrupt. You have to stop." And you can't expect the businesses to not be like a corrupting factor. They're naturally going to be a corrupting factor. There's no getting around.
Whether or not they're going to or should is an interesting topic, but I don't have the tools to address that right now because I don't know enough about it.
Okay.
But I will say, domestically, people complain about, the corporations with their corporate welfare, and it's like, okay, so what's your solution? I'm always asking, what's the solution?
Oh, right. Okay.
Oh, well, let's fucking occupy Wall Street. Let's Bernie Sanders. You guys are all Bernie bros.
I did like Bernie.
Yeah, of course you did. He believes in your principles, but he's on
steroids.
steroids.
I'm finding myself growing less and less fond of Bernie as time goes by.
Why? Because you're a business owner now.
Yeah, I'm becoming more capitalist.
All right, so why does it have to? Why does it have to be your own pocketbook, your own checkbook that determines your beliefs? Shouldn't you have any principles?
Rationally selfish.
Then shouldn't you be rationally selfish going into the game, not just wait till you personally
most
succeed?
People don't have such a well
they should.
Out,
they should.
Oh, they should, but they don't. But okay, so
by the way, my solution is to separate the government from business 100%, so there is no room for corruption because there's nobody to buy.
So you don't want corporate welfare at all? Not
at all.
So you think of a corporation, regardless of how big it is, if it starts failing, you don't want government bailouts?
Never.
Right, you're a Hayek liberal. Right. Hayek was completely against that. He was like, no, part of capitalism is destruction as well as creation. You know, you need it creates the loan that things grow.
As long as nobody is defrauded and nobody is personally violated, it's your property, big or small.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's up to you. If that corporation starts failing, that's their problem. That's their responsibility. They caused that to happen. You know, they didn't read the market. They've got a bad business model.
Whether it's their fault or whether it happened by accident.
Well, yeah.
I just want the government and all militias and all criminals and all gangs to stay completely out of it. I just want justice.
Sure, but I don't think that the government should be bailing out banks or big business. If they're going to fail, they should fail, and in their place, other entrepreneurs will rise and build something. Hopefully. You know, like for example, in the UK, they kept going on. Oh, well, what if we don't give huge tax breaks and subsidies to Starbucks? They'll leave, and it's like, okay, let them leave. You know, it's not like people will say, well, you know what, I just don't want coffee anymore. You know. It'll be small coffee shops that spring up, and it'll be small businessmen, and they will enrich themselves, and then people will, the process will start again.
You think a lot in terms of like the pragmatic benefits of capitalism, and that's a very popular defense of capitalism is, hey, capitalism works, and then it turns into an argument.
In principle, it's freedom.
Well, listen, that argument was won a long time ago, in my opinion. You only need to look at...
Not for the socialists.
Well, you just look at East and West Berlin. You look at North and South Korea. Agree. So why is it that they're still winning?
Because they're not making a moral argument of capitalism, and they need to.
I like that.
There is absolutely a moral argument of capitalism, because otherwise the alternative is to not own your own property, as in you as the property. You are your own means of production. I mean, we are independent YouTubers and content creators. We are the method of production. If it wasn't for you, you would have nothing. You know, you can't expect someone else to make Rucka Ali songs. You know, only you are capable. You are the means of production. You are actually living the Marxist dream, believe it or not. But
how's that?
Because it's a long story. I'm not going to go into it.
Right.
But basically, there's you are the means of production. So you're not owned by a businessman. Someone else is exploiting your labor.
Last time
you're exploiting your own labor. But that can only happen when you have self ownership. And like all these collectivists, the socialists, the statists, as Randians would say, that you don't have self ownership. You fundamentally are not in possession.
So
of your own labor.
why is their view more prevailing?
Because it's lazy. It's easy to say, oh, is it right that someone should go hungry? And it's like, well, no, but it's also not right that I shouldn't be the owner of myself.
It also ties in this.
The freedom to succeed is also includes the freedom to fail.
Sure. It also ties in this image of the selfish businessman as being evil. And you turn on a TV, there are always these guys in suits pulling guns on each other. Always businessmen are responsible. The highest number of murders in TV shows are always businessmen, like by a landslide.
Is that true?
Yeah. There's barely ever, like, Bruce Wayne is like the only billionaire I can think of who's presented as a good guy, and even he in the more
he's a bad guy. I hate.
Well, even
Bruce Wayne.
he's presented as kind of like a conflicted.
But he is actually a bad guy. I mean, if Bruce Wayne genuinely wanted to do good, he would put his money into, like, charity, or into the, he'd give the police force the resources they needed to actually combat the crime wave that's constantly afflicting Gotham. Not getting out in a bat suit and beating up low vigilante justice.
That's probably debatable. That's not something I'm comfortable debating, because I wish I was more of a geek.
Oh, like, okay. That's just the example.
I once walked into a comic book store, and this beautiful girl was sitting there, and she told me and my friends, like, "Hey guys, look around. You guys want to hang out, talk about anything geeky? I'll be right here." And I'm thinking to myself, like, I wish I had something to talk about.
Oh, don't worry. It's the principle of the thing. But like,
yeah,
So the business, and let's go into the Bill Gates thing, which is where I think.
Okay, so I brought this up at lunch before. So Bill Gates creates Microsoft, and if the standard is helping others and making other people happy and healthy and all that, Microsoft brought the world to a new level of comfort and happiness and access to information. But, no question, right? Oh, I'm sure someone in the comments will explain why the internet made life worse. But I would say...
I think that we can universally agree the internet has been a benefit.
I would hope so. Yeah. Anyway. And then how is he seen? Is he seen as a morally good person? Is he seen as a hero? He's seen as, at best, neutral, right? Like, whatever. He's a businessman creating a product. He made money doing it. So he's at best neutral, and more often than not, he's seen as an asshole.
We were in Berkeley the other day, and there was a homeless gentleman who he was outright saying anyone who's a billionaire is immoral because they must have exploited people. Yeah. But who did Bill Gates exploit? I mean, all he did, he purchased the DOS operating system from, it was a willing exchange. 50 grand he paid for it, I think it was, and then he persuaded IBM to package that as an operating system with their computers. IBM had a successful product that they made all through legitimate legal means. And yeah, as you said, I think that you can't really argue that Windows hasn't improved the world. It certainly has.
Sure.
I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without Windows.
Okay, but so it did. Like, just for the sake of this example.
It's a necessary tool for me to use, so it's a good thing.
The reason people hate Bill Gates is not because they feel that Microsoft didn't make the world a better place. Pretty much anyone who uses the internet
is going to say that
recognizes that came from Microsoft in the first place.
But just to ensure, and that's not to say that if Bill Gates didn't exist and Microsoft didn't exist, someone wouldn't take the place. They would, but they would just be in the same position that we are now considering Bill Gates to be. It's still a good thing that, whatever replacement in an alternate dimension where Bill Gates didn't exist, whoever else had thought of the same thing. I'm
not a big fan of hypotheticals. I hope that someone else would take this internet. I hope someone would recognize this internet technology as something great to put in everyone's home, just like Henry Ford put a car in everyone's garage. I hope so, but for now we're living in the timeline where it was Bill Gates.
Yeah.
How is he seen? Is he seen as an altruist? No, he's seen as a self-centered, selfish in a bad way businessman who again
he's actually a massive philanthropist.
Well, but we're not there yet. We're in the 90s now. All right, he creates Microsoft, and everyone's using it, everyone's loving it, everyone's raving about the internet, but everyone just fucking spits on him. The guy's seen as a total fuck. I mean, at best, people kind of admire him for his success. They kind of see him as.
Do you think it's because? I mean, capitalism is a system that's based on self-interest.
Right.
You can watch a Milton Friedman interview, and he will explain it in great detail.
Yeah.
And he's right though. He is right that it makes more sense to have a system that is based on self-interest, because all human beings are self-interested. And so if you can have a system where people serve each other out of their self-interest, then that's a stable system. Unlike with, say, communism or something, where now you're not operating in your own self-interest, you're operating in the interest of the state, which may well run counter to your own self-interest. And so you have to self-sacrifice for something else. You're obviously going to get a percentage of people who are resistant to that. Even if the majority go along, you're going to get the difficult minority that you're going to have to keep down because they want to do something.
I don't even know if I would agree that everyone is self-interested. I mean, many people are suicidal. Many people have throughout history prevented themselves from succeeding. I mean, in parts of Asia where they've taken these Oriental philosophies very seriously, they're all laying in the sun waiting to die.
That's right, but self-interest doesn't necessarily mean material gain.
No, well, if,
So
if
self-interest, for example, in like the second century AD, you had like the Stylites, the Christian monks, ascetics, who would literally go sit on a pillar in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
That's their own self-interest. They want to do that. As far as they're concerned, they're communing with God.
Okay.
They're getting close. They're not concerned with material goods,
Yeah.
but if you were to put them to work in a factory, they'd be like terribly depressed. So they'd be like, okay, I'm getting rich. I'm making stuff. I'm getting rich, but that's not interesting to them. That's not what they want.
And
so you're going against their self-interest, even if they're getting rich and famous and powerful.
And now, so my understanding is that Kant wanted to get rid of that. He wanted to get rid of the pursuit of values qua the pursuit of values. So even if you're a conscious altruist who is pursuing the idea, who's pursuing the giving, the sacrifice, who wants to give, he says no. The fact that you even want to do it, that's your value, negates its virtue.
Yeah, you're doing it for the end in and of itself.
You should just do it because it's your duty and not even be happy that you're doing it, not even feel good about it.
Right.
And then, fast forward to, Nazi Germany, as Peikoff, the Holocaust is like a giant confusing mystery to so many people because they're like, everyone's like, why? Like, with the gulags, it's like the point is to get everyone to be communists, and if they protest, punish them. Yeah. Kim Jong-un is punishing kids today for the crimes of their grandfathers. Horrible and cruel, but at least there's a cause and effect to trace it to.
Yeah, it's rational, yeah.
In a very limited way it is. Okay. But why were the Nazis performing surgeries unnecessary on patients? Why were they having their prisoners work on a windmill that was empty inside?
Yeah.
What the fuck? And as
Peikoff explains it.
Yeah. How would you say he?
Well, what I took from it, and I think this is very interesting, is how they got them to end up. And again, he has a brilliant turn of phrase: monsters of obedience. That was I love that term, and I'll probably use that at some point in a video or something because the system, the Nazis were really psychological, and that's what people really forget. It's because the communists weren't actually that concerned about what you thought; they were concerned about what you did. It doesn't really matter if you're opposed to communism if you're participating in communism and you're not voicing your opinions. But the Nazis wanted control of your mind. And there's a Hitler quote in The Ominous Parallels where he's sitting there saying, "Look, we don't need to take the means of production from the people. We're going to take their brains. We socialize humans," is the exact quote. And so the Nazis wanted complete control of like the way you viewed the world. And one of these things was making not only making the victims of the concentration camps just willingly walk into their deaths. And this is another thing that people don't understand. Like, how did you get them to go into these gas chambers and get gassed? Dude, by the time they were being gassed, they didn't care. I mean, the punishments were arbitrary. They literally have them moving piles of sand from one point to another, and they might just randomly shoot one. The point was to break down the cause and effect that kept people sane. And so you're trapped in this nightmarish hell world where you could just be punished at any time for any reason. And by the time you're walking into a gas chamber, you don't even know. It's just like, well, whatever. Who knows? It doesn't matter. And the thing is that the flip side is it was also to desensitize the guards as well, to make them do it. And they're the monsters of obedience. It's just right for them to do this because they were not human, and so it didn't matter. And obviously, the sort of people who would end up doing that would be the most capricious, sadistic people you can imagine. And you would train people to be like that,
right?
And
I think at first the Nazi guards were the ones that really couldn't wait to be cruel, but ultimately, eventually, they brought in the
system
other,
forces people into that mindset.
Yeah, it was a giant laboratory for the guards as well as the prisoners.
But it was so much more psychological than the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was just brutal for the sake of communism. But the Nazis had a plan,
and the plan was not simply to get everyone to be Nazis, to get them to agree. It was obedience and to kind of shut off the
total submission to the Führer,
and to shut off the the rational faculty. If a prisoner in the
make rationality not a thing.
Right.
That's the thing. Yeah. There's no rhyme or reason to why you're moving a pile of sand from one place to another, or why you're winding a windmill with nothing in. There's no rhyme or reason to it, but you've got to do it because otherwise you're being punished.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, to break the rational progression and the logical order of step A to B to C, which everyone requires on to live their lives. Cause and effect. And Peikoff does a great great job of breaking that down. That's why the Omnibus Parallels is useful.
You know, the reason I try to avoid even reading YouTube comments is because I know, like, someone's commenting right now, oh, the communists killed more people than the Nazis. Like, we're not talking about fucking body count. We're exploring ideas. We're talking about what were the ideas that led to Nazi Germany, that were prevailing during Nazi Germany, which is why I have a really hard time calling people Nazis today, even if they are.
Yeah, they're not.
Even if
Nazis.
they are doing the Sieg Heil, like it's.
This is the thing. This is like people call Richard Spencer and Jared Taylor Nazis. They're not Nazis. Nazis were a unique phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're. I mean, you know, like the Japanese were brutal in every way, shape, or form. They were fascist, but they weren't Nazis. The Nazis had a specific weird ideology, and I don't like calling people Nazis for that reason.
Well, you know, it's very interesting since you finished reading the book, kind of seeing you go about your business and seeing you interview people, and I see you start to bring up the fact that, you know, we're shaped by ideas. Individually, we're shaped by ideas.
I've always believed it, though.
Well, maybe implicitly, but I've been hearing it more lately, and when I see you bringing it up to people that you're talking to, they almost seem confused by it. A lot of the time, and I hope that I hope you find yourself further alienated. I hope you find yourself very lonely and very disillusioned with the people around you. Like I really hope, I really hope you find yourself to be ultimately like you're fucking living on Planet of the Apes and nobody understands you. Because nobody, you know, like these are very foreign ideas. Just the belief that we're shaped by ideas. You know, I saw you on Crowder saying that. I think it was toward the end of your interview, you just mentioned the Enlightenment values and that, you know, these Enlightenment values are a good thing that are being under attack. And I believe I remember his reaction, which is kind of like very kind of lukewarm about it.
It was. I expected him to be stronger on it.
Well, your expectation is the mother of disappointment or whatever the fuck
ups or whatever.
Well, but here's the thing. Guys like Crowder, Ben Shapiro, certainly Prager, these guys are very lukewarm about the Enlightenment. They see it as a very mixed bag because it definitely carved a stake through the heart of religion.
Oh, yeah.
And they try to make the Enlightenment all about Kant. They want to point to Kant and say, see what the Enlightenment did? Even though I think Peikoff really makes the case is that Kant was the anti-Enlightenment. He was trying to take us back to the period, the Dark Ages.
He was certainly trying to defend religion.
Yeah.
Certainly.
In a way, he kind of took it a step further. You know, like religion as it, you know, Western religion as it manifested in the Middle Ages was very much kind of like, God says do this, so do this.
Oh, yeah.
If you do it, God will reward you. If you don't follow his orders, God will punish you, which is a much more kind of integrated view of the universe than just kind of like, do this, but you don't even know why you're doing it. Don't feel good that you're doing it. You don't even get virtue points for doing it. It's just very. It's just he's you know, all these people who say they're anti-religion. You know, you're anti-religion. If you're into this fucking irrational Kantian view of the world, like you're advocating for something even less rational than religion. All you guys who are acting like like, you know, and let me fucking piss off some more people. All you got, like, I'm not that into Richard Dawkins. I don't find him that interesting. I don't find all these new atheists that interesting. These guys are, in some ways, kind of intellectually lazy. And I know that, Rucka thinks he's smarter. I don't think I'm smarter than anyone. I'm just saying, like, you when you see Richard Dawkins saying, like, hey, once we abandon religion, we can continue to evolve. It's like, yeah, guess what? God has been dead for centuries, and he's coming back to life because there's a giant void left open that you've been unable or unwilling to fill with anything better. And you know, they just, I heard Dawkins talk about how, like, oh, it's good that now we're changing language to be more gender neutral. So this is your guy. This is the guy who has the answer. Yeah, he watch his Rubin or listen to his Rubin interview. Well, you know, he didn't have to say it because they've all been saying it. Like, these guys, they just want to talk about, does God exist or not? They're basically like YouTube, all of YouTube. What have you guys been arguing about for the past 10 years? Just like atheism versus religion. It's like, who fucking cares? It's not the 1600s anymore, okay? Let's move on. What's next? There's a better question. What's next? If God does not exist, which, spoiler alert, he doesn't, what's next, though? What's next?
Good question.
So, I mean, I would say Aristotle introduced a mode of thinking which said that, you know, A is A. That was his big. A is A. You know, everything is what it is. The law of identity. Mm-hmm. So you learn through your senses, you identify things, you know that you exist because that's your axiom, that's self-evident.
Yeah.
And then you kind of build your way up from there. And as far as what you should do, which is ethics, what should I do? Like, what should I do right now? Should I be on the floor? Should I be sitting here? Should I be talking? Should I be driving off a cliff? You have to ask the main question, and this is Ayn Rand expanding on Aristotle. So Aristotle said, my understanding of Aristotle is he said, the purpose of morality, the purpose of ethics is flourishing. The beneficiary of morality is the person practicing it. Does that sound like the contemporary view of morality? Does that sound like, when people say he's a good person, do they mean he's a guy who's I mean, sometimes they do.
I'm not even sure if that's... I don't think that's comprehensive enough, because the beneficiary of morality is also the people who are not acted upon in a negative way. For example,
okay, like
you find it immoral to pull out a knife and stab me, and therefore I benefit from not being stabbed because you find that immoral. So
okay,
it's not entirely on the person. There is also
the
people they're interacting with.
I'm not smart enough to respond to that. I mean, yes, by not being stabbed, you are benefiting.
Well, this is the essence of the social contract, basically.
Okay, fine.
We agree that.
Okay, fine.
We agree.
But before we get to the social contract, the social construct, beware.
Seriously though, beware the social constructivists.
Yeah. But before we
there are other people that peak off. He goes hard on the social constructivists, and it's good.
Yeah. But so the social contract is obviously in the realm of politics, right? That's how people engage with each other. But
it's also philosophy.
Well, politics is part of philosophy.
That's true.
But before we get to politics, we're talking about ethics, which literally is just what should I do? How should I act? So Ayn Rand, who is really the first to ever do this, she comes along and says, she kind of takes what Aristotle began and says the rational way to look at this is that the ultimate question is the ultimate choice, life or death, to be or not to be. And just kind of take it from there. If the answer is not to be, death, well, there you have your answer. Just do nothing. You'll be dead before you know it. If the answer is I want to live, what do you have to do? Back to the question of what's our tool of survival. You have to think. So let's say we're in the jungle right now and it's the year 1 trillion BC. What are we going to do? We gotta think. We gotta get away from the predators. We've got to shape tools to hunt them. We've got to shape better tools to fend off the other crazy people. We gotta
it's the constant process.
Right, constant process, and then think, produce. And we need to know that we need to look at our achievements and say, I did that. I'm patting myself on the back for doing that. That's my self-esteem. Pride. Aristotle also saw pride as a positive. It's very, very Christian to say that pride is a sin. Very Christian. And it's everywhere. Yeah. Atheists hold on to that shit for dear life, that being proud is an ugly thing. If it's based on your actual achievements, Aristotle says... pride is a wonderful thing.
I think there can be unjustified pride. I think that's that's
irrational, not based on your. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, because you're you. Self-esteem.
And I think the Christians that's because it seems okay. So there's actually quite a big thread we've pulled on here, because one of the unhealthy things that is always present in human psychology is self-aggrandizement. There's nothing wrong with being proud, but when you consider that pride to elevate you above other people, then you're self-aggrandizing. And someone who is legitimately self-confident and proud in themselves, we're moving into the realm of psychology here, but it's always going to be a factor in human beings.
Again, but context. If it's based on your actual ability and your achievements, you should be proud of being a better Sargon than anyone else.
Absolutely, but I don't need to say that, because it'll be self-evident from the the way this is the Aristotelian way of looking at things. You are what you repeatedly do.
Sure.
And so I don't need to sit there and aggrandize myself saying, "Hey, look at what I do. Look at how the views I get. Look at this." That doesn't. I don't need to lord that over other people. And
No. I never said anything about other people.
I know you didn't. That's the thing. But that's the that's what Christianity, I think, was trying to get away from. The natural tendency for people who are less well thought through in their philosophy to build their ego, to place themselves above other people, this is the essence of Greek tragedy is hubris. Like Milo right now. I think he's coming. I think he's going to be a great example of a modern Greek tragedy.
Right.
And because you see him post on social media, oh, this coat costs more than your monthly salary and stuff like this. It's like, look, that is needless self-aggrandizement. And it's showy and it's fun for some people, but it's also the essence of the tragedies that they're talking about. You're building yourself up for the inevitable fall, because you can never just keep on going up and up and up. Yeah. So you will eventually crash, and so it's more healthy, and this is what sort of Arthur Diekman was talking about in his Cult book. It's unhealthy for you as a person to get this impression of yourself as being superior to other people irrationally, like you're saying. Not and you are still all of these things. You're still you're still the best Rucka. You're still, you've got your success, and you don't need to use that to bolster your ego, because that's you.
Listen, I'm not crazy about even comparing yourself to anyone. It shouldn't even be about other people. Again, we're in the jungle. Exactly, yeah. We're in the jungle. You figure out how to start a fire. It's not about all the people that didn't figure that out. It's just, oh my gosh, I have an ability to do something.
You have absolutely every right to be proud of this.
Yeah, pride, it doesn't have to do with who didn't come up with this.
That's exactly it. It's about not about it's not about sort of a form of social aggression, using your pride to say I'm better than you, which is the Young Turks in a nutshell, and it's sad watching that happen when you don't need that to happen. And it's definitely something innate to human psychology, and I think that's what Christianity was trying to avoid. And I understand that 2,000 years ago, when moral philosophy was far less well developed, this would have been a useful thing to have. Especially if you're under the Romans and they're erecting giant statues of themselves. It's like, okay, but why does this guy need a statue?
The Romans were drifting farther away from Aristotle and closer to Plato, and eventually Christianity, which is a very Platonic religion. Even if the Israelites were obviously different, separate from the Greeks, but the ideas behind Jesus' words were very Platonic, just that there's that kingdom of heaven out there, and you need to follow God's instructions. I
agree. I think it's very much more Aristotelian, because give away your possessions. It's the things you're doing that make you the good Christian. Like Jesus saying, go and pray in your closet.
In that regard, it's in some ways Christianity is a Western religion. Everything about the West is a mixture of Aristotle and Plato.
But I think Christianity is very much influenced by Aristotle.
Very much, but it's overwhelmingly Platonic, because the truth is out there. You've seen Aristotle and Plato standing side by side in that Michelangelo painting, and Plato's pointing up to the sky, and Aristotle is pointing to the ground. That's Western history for you. It's all been Aristotle versus Plato, and the stuff that we don't like, religious dogma. In my case, sacrifice for no good reason, which is what makes it sacrifice. If it had a good reason, it wouldn't be a sacrifice.
I think is that true?
Let's just skip over that one for now, because I feel like we're going somewhere more important. Okay. Christianity, in essence, was Plato taking over the West. Aristotle was buried. Quite literally, his books could not be found for a long time, and the ideas of Aristotle were buried deep.
It was the rediscovery of Aristotle that sparked the Renaissance.
Sure, Aquinas. It kind of brought Aristotelian logic into Christianity. So even though it was still Christian, there was now, hold on, but now we need to use logic. So in essence, even God himself is being scrutinized. Even his own existence is being put on trial. So that ultimately, the way I understand it, kind of began the process of getting religion out of the West, at least defanging it. There's a word that I would use. Defanged. So Christians today in America, or certainly Christians 50 years ago, because they've kind of been moving more towards the radical end of things again, but 50 years ago, a Christian in America was overwhelmingly Aristotelian. 60, 70 years ago, 100 years ago in America, and I know someone's going to point out crazy shit that happened in fucking Mississippi. I'm talking about the thriving middle class of America, during the real good times.
Sort of from a Protestant work ethic.
Sure, I mean, a lot of these guys, they went to church on Sunday, but these guys, they were living here on Earth. They were living for them. They saw a beautiful car drive by, and they said, "Oh, look at that beautiful Cadillac." It wasn't they weren't ashamed of riches. In many ways, obviously, I'm painting with a broad brush, but Yeah, it was, you know,
I know what you mean, though, the sort of ethos of the time.
And America is the Aristotelian country, even though the founding fathers were not perfect Aristotelians. So something Yaron Brooks says often, which check out his podcast. I think if you just listen to him on a regular basis, it would give you a lot of food for thought. He says that this country was founded. It's the greatest country ever, founded on quicksand.
Yes.
They didn't have the ethics to back up what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were saying, this is the country, the land of the individual. You've got political freedom. Individually, you're an individual, and they believed in a very scientific view of the world. So metaphysically, everything is what it is, or very kind of objective that way. But when it came to ethics, they just kind of skipped over it. They're just kind of like most or all of the Enlightenment thinkers.
Yeah.
Ethics was still they just kind of took for granted.
Well, this is a problem.
The ethics of Christianity.
This is what Peikoff actually goes into.
Right.
I've got the Dialectic of Enlightenment over there from the Frankfurt School. But you can see I've got the tabs in because I'm going through it now.
Yeah.
I'm only like 20 pages in, but because the Enlightenment's incomplete.
Yeah.
That's the problem with it, and that's why it's because you're right, and that's why they've managed to wear it away. But I think Jordan Peterson's right. He's like, look, the fundamental premises of the Enlightenment must be correct, otherwise we wouldn't have all of this. We wouldn't have the material success of the country, even if we don't understand it ourselves. If it wasn't right and it didn't work, how would we have such amazing civilizations that were the envy of the entire world?
Well, the conservative commentators would say that's religion that gave us that, and they would say the reason Islam has failed, that the Muslim world has failed, is because they're not Christian. So they kind of see it through that prism.
They'd say that.
I would say it's because Christianity has been defanged. Christianity in the modern era is a style. It's a style. It's not.
To be fair,
it's an afterthought.
When you go into the text of Christianity, there really is nothing in it that justifies religious domination. That seems to me to be a compromise of the fundamental values of Christianity for material necessity.
Well, it doesn't have to. It tells you to be irrational and not to think independently, which in turn will lead us. All
religions do that, yeah.
Right, which leads us to whenever irrationality takes hold, which is, spoiler alert, pretty much most of human history, you'll find dictatorial rulers filling the vacuum that we've left open for them. And kind of like one thing that I hear a lot of people say a lot, which is that this human nature is to just destroy ourselves. Like, no, that's not human nature. That's just what we've mostly done. But we don't have to. Just as right now you're not destroying yourself, humanity itself doesn't need to destroy itself. We can be rational, we should be rational, and we must be rational because it's the only way.
I guess we'll end there.
Let me just give you a book I got you.
Oh, okay.
I hope...
He gave me the ominous parallels.
Yeah.
I'm really glad about it. So we'd never have found it.
I heard you talking about, we've got communists and Nazis fighting in the streets.
Yeah, we do,
I remember you said that, so I thought the ominous parallels would be a great book to give you.
Yeah.
So right now we're in Berkeley.
Oh, okay.
This book right here.
Now I'm actually going to have to read some mine round. Thanks, Rob.
I mean, some of the essays are actually not by her, but I mean, look at the name of the first chapter. Read the first sentence.
Okay, the so-called student rebellion, which was started and keynoted at the University of California at Berkeley, has profound significance, but not of the kind that most commentators have ascribed to it. The nature of the misrepresentations is a part of its significance.
All right, I said one sentence.
Sorry.
I said the first sentence. Now, you can read it later. But,
I will. Yeah.
It's fucking about Berkeley.
It's relevant to this subject.
I mean, it always drives me nuts when people talk about, the free speech movement of UC Berkeley. What happened to Berkeley? They used to be the free speech They never were. Berkeley was always a shit show. These guys, they were fucking reckless, violent. These were the Black Panthers and the fucking pro-Viet Cong activists. These guys hated freedom. They hated liberty. They hated thinking. They hated reason. These guys were at war with these guys. I mean, these students were acting on what had been taught to them at those very universities, which, as that chapter makes evident, the professors themselves, they didn't really know on what grounds to even punish these kids. They were like, okay, yeah, I guess we'll see to your demands. And the students were saying, we want to be in charge of our own curriculum. And they were like, okay, yeah, I guess. And, you know, if you look at what's happening in, you know, Evergreen or wherever the fuck now, it's like all these colleges.
Oh, they're doing exactly that.
I mean, it's not that the faculty are weak per se, but they're the ones who taught these students these exact principles. They're the ones who taught them.
Yeah.
If you're black, you should be afraid every minute of the day because you can be attacked at any time. Then why would you blame your black students for then storming your office and holding you hostage?
Yeah, no,
Till their
that's
demands
exactly
are
right.
met.
And literally, the principal just had no grounds on which to resist them. You know, it's like, oh, you're a white privileged male, we're underprivileged black people, therefore, and he's got like, well, yeah, that's exactly what I believe. So what the hell is my reason? And this is what drives me crazy about the whole, like, white people are evil, therefore. It's like, well, Jesus Christ, that means that literally any time a black person wants something from a white person, they can just give that rationale, and you have to concede. There's you don't have an argument against it. But anyway.
But anyway, you know, something that to always kind of keep in the back of your mind, like as much time as you want to spend tearing your opponents apart and pointing at the problems and what's wrong with their point of view, which you're very good at and many people are very good at, if you don't have anything positive that you're promoting, you can't really complain, and you're honestly going to drift the same way. And you know, I've been saying of you and others of your your contemporaries, like you guys are all drifting towards the alt-right or the alt-right. You're all drifting towards nationalism. You're all drifting towards maybe some form of either religious or like appreciation of religion. I mean, we've been hanging out with these. How would you describe the? I don't want to mention any names, but some of the friends we've hung out with this week. They're
certainly
they're like a new right.
But
what are they saying that is fundamentally different from the prevailing view? Not really. They're just kind of more consistent.
That's
with it.
why when I was giving the Atlantic journalist hassle, I pointed directly at the guy and go, "Look, you're giving rise to
You've
this."
created someone like that. As he
I literally just pointed at the guy.
He pointed at an identitarian that was sitting in the room and said, "You've helped create someone like that." But again, these guys, you know, we heard one of them say, "Yeah, the Enlightenment is overrated." Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally disagree.
But you got to ask yourself: are you consistently pro-Enlightenment? Are you consistently pro-reason? Are you consistently for something positive? Because if not, then why are you? Is it any surprise these guys are?
I think you raise a really good point, and being opposed to something is not merely enough. This is why, like, if someone says, "Are you an anti-feminist?" It's like, well, yes, but I don't have it as a label. That's just a description. You know, I am against feminism on the grounds that I am a liberal, you know, a sort of classical liberal from the English tradition. Therefore, I am for, you know, liberty, reason, and all this. And feminism is opposed to these things. You know, they want control, they want irrationality, they want... I mean, we need to assert that more clearly.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, being atheist is not a thing either. You're just lack of theism. And on that note, enjoy your atheist convention coming up. But if there's no nothing to fill its place, then it gets filled with really something even worse oftentimes.
Yeah, well, I definitely think the promotion of reason, though, I think a lot of people find that to be kind of by the by. I think that they assume that everyone agrees that reason is a good thing.
Right.
But they don't.
Well,
that's the thing.
Listen,
and we need to be aware of that.
You keep jumping over to how do I explain this to people without them misconstruing or misunderstanding what I'm saying. And I'm saying, Sargon, let's just focus on you. You know, what is it about these ideas that you're dragging your feet on?
Well, that's a good question.
You know, when I see you getting on YouTube saying that, if there was a law that hotel rooms need to give free rooms to the homeless, I would support that.
No,
really? Well, is your YouTube revenue that high that you can afford to house a homeless guy every day?
I didn't say that.
You absolutely 1,000%.
Then I take it back. Okay, no. Okay, look, I'm not saying that.
Too late.
Okay, look, let me explain. Look, in times of crisis, I can understand why something would be done.
It's always crisis with you people.
Yeah, but sometimes crisis
everything.
happens.
It's always we're in a lifeboat and we're on an island and there's only one piece of bread left. Who gets it? That's moral philosophy 101 in today's world. There's always a crisis.
Yeah, but sometimes you've got to deal with them. You can't.
But we don't live in.
This is why I'm not an objectivist.
You don't even know what that even means.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay, then explain it to me. Why are you not objectivist?
Because I don't think that selfishness is a virtue.
Why not?
We're not going to go.
We haven't
got the time.
What does virtue mean?
Let's not go into it. We'll do it.
What do you mean? You can't say something's not a virtue and then say, "I'll tell you why it is a virtue," because purpose. Hold on. Give me 10 seconds.
We were literally at the end of
this. Who cares? Who cares if it's over? It's the internet. We don't have a hard break.
All right.
And fucking leave a like and sign off if you're bored of this. But I don't get to talk to this guy that often because he barely returns emails and he's high. He's got a marijuana dependency.
I wish I did. Jesus.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember the last time I smoked weed.
Oh really? You're into edibles.
Well, or eating any. I've just been busy and traveling. So
good. All right.
No, good. I like getting stoned. But go on.
Oh. Okay, so what I was saying is the purpose of ethics is to make choices. What's the choice? And if the choice is to live versus to die, if the choice is to live, then you must think and then act in your interest. Whether it's starting a fire 10,000, however many tens of thousands of years ago, or to aggregate and to is this aggregate meaning agriculture where you farm and stuff?
It doesn't. But
no, it doesn't.
Mean,
To farm, to hunt, to build, to act in a way that is in the interest of extending your life. So therefore, if the purpose of morality, if the purpose of ethics is to is the choice that you ought to make to extend and improve your life, then therefore anything you do that's consistent with that is a virtue, and anything you do that is contrary to that is the opposite of a virtue, which is a vice, a sin, not a sin. That's
I think
mystical.
A vice is probably,
a vice. Sure.
I think what I'll do is I'll spend some time writing out my thoughts on this because this is quite a complicated thing to just do off the top of your head.
Okay.
But we'll do another podcast at some point, and
Sounds
good. We'll talk about it again when I've clearly laid out my thoughts on it because I'll end up.
I just want to point out the reason that
it's not that you don't have a point.
No, I mean, and I'm humbled by greater thinkers than I that have handed me this.
Oh yeah.
This, but
tip the fedora.
Yeah, tip the fedora. But I just want to point out, just to kind of tie it all together, the reason you're losing, the reason that the world keeps going in a direction you hate to see it go, is because on the ethical level, you're all clinging to altruism as the ideal. You still see the person who sacrifices, who suffers, as morally more admirable, morally better than the person who is selfish and rationally selfish and pursuing their values. So that's why we lose. That's why we see businessmen as necessarily dishonest. That's why we have such a hard time condemning communism after the body count is astronomical. You can literally probably reach the moon
the problem with the body count is that the communists don't care about the body count, so you can't argue on that basis. But when you bring up the body count, what you're doing, you're not arguing against the communists themselves. You're arguing for the onlooker when you're doing that, because that's if you're actually trying to deconvert a communist, then you can't do it on the basis of the body count.
My point being, it's the ethics that make the difference here. People are driven by ideas, and more specifically, they're driven by ethics. That's the thing that people don't want to accept. That everyone thinks that people vote according to their pocketbook. People vote against their own interests all the time. People act against their own interests all the time.
I think a lot of the time that's because they
just look at America's lack of self-defense, or Europe. Can we agree that Europe is not really looking out for themselves right now?
Yes.
That's altruism. Yeah. That's Jesus nailed to a cross. Oh, what a great guy. Yeah, he's getting tortured horribly for the sake of lesser people. What a fucking hero. We hold that as the moral ideal, so we don't have the confidence to defend ourselves or to pursue our own values. So the ethical level is
comes down to saying I matter, doesn't it?
It does. I matter. I deserve to exist. I'm going to serve myself in a rational way. And then when you get to politics, then that's where we have to respect each other's rights and trade, so that one person doesn't have to both farm and produce and create their own clothes. So we trade, and that's probably the realm where you're more familiar with, from the libertarian stuff. So look, somebody from a libertarian think tank could probably do a better job than I arguing for capitalism or whatever, but. It's the ethics that matter more than the politics.
They do it on a material level, though.
Right.
We need to do a moral.
It needs to be ethics. Ethics is where the battleground takes place, and that's why when dictators get power, they get up there, they say, "Hey, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the people." And if any one of the people protests, they go, "Oh, you're being selfish." You're being selfish.
And not only that, you're against the people.
You're against the people, right?
Yeah. So, and I'm the people. So.
I mean, the altruism and just the ethics of altruism is responsible for just a really, really large amount of damage. If the criteria is human happiness on Earth.
The thing is, though, going the other way, I think that you're going to end up. This is why I don't think I call selfishness a virtue, because there are definitely going to be times where there are people who are suffering, and it will be a virtuous thing to ignore them.
Why is that?
Because I don't have to give them anything.
You don't have to, but
and there's no benefit to me to help this person.
Well, hold on. What if? Okay, so let's say we've.
And I'm being virtuous.
Okay, let's say we're living in a world where many of the great thinkers, or most of them, have come to embrace Aristotelian's law of identity. They've gotten to the conclusion that Ayn Rand makes, that proper ethics are selfish, and now we've crafted a society built on that, which is one that completely protects your individual right to produce and to trade. And so we were living in a laissez-faire economy and a laissez-faire free society. Our enemies, foreign and domestic, have been contained and eliminated, and we're seeing our standard of living rise to places unimaginable. Basically, every sector of our economy is like the iPhone, just expanding and evolving by the day. Okay, and now there's still some people that are still unable to provide for themselves. You wouldn't have a couple bucks to throw at them? Let's say you don't.
True. No, I do. But even, I do.
Sure. I mean, and even if you don't want to do it just out of the kindness of your heart, I might, if someone invites me to perform at a benefit concert, fuck, it sounds fun. Donald Trump, not my favorite politician out there, but his TV show raised a lot of money for charity. What if The Apprentice season 850 is raising charity for that handful of people unable to provide for themselves? I would watch the show. There, you've got them raising money, all this money. Like Bono would play at that concert, wouldn't he? He's got such a hard on for the needy.
Presumably.
I mean, so, by the way, if Bono really wanted the Africans to succeed, he would be promoting capitalism. Same with everyone else. Everyone who acts like, they care so much about these third world countries. If you really care, you hate the rich more than you love the poor. Isn't that what it kind of boils down to?
And he's absolutely right with socialists. But yeah, no, I do agree with you on a lot of this. That's the thing. But there's just something about calling selfishness a virtue that I think puts I think it puts people in the wrong frame of mind. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's wrong. I think it's maybe a deficiency with people themselves.
It's not a deficiency. I think we're born a blank slate. And Aristotle...
I don't think that's necessarily true.
I think to a very large degree we are. Like, again, we've got Steve Jobs and...
Culturally, sure. But, there are always going to be biological imperatives. But not only that...
I think our ethics are not ingrained in us.
No, of course not. Right. Of course not. But what I mean is... I think that for intelligent people who are very capable of this level of reasoning, yes, it makes a lot of sense. But for people who are not this intelligent, who aren't this capable of a level of reasoning, I think that trying to explain to them how selfishness can be a virtue and not turning them into degenerate moral people, like moral degenerates,
right. So
is not. I think you're going to cause that just. And I'm not saying that the values are wrong or anything like that. It's a deficiency in the people themselves, I suppose.
Right.
But this is reality. Like Machiavelli says, we've got to accept men as they are, not how we'd rather them be.
Well, so you're like Plato. You're saying people can't be trusted to think for themselves, and we need to have philosopher kings. Well, here's what. Well,
there are always going to be.
Philosopher
kings exist anyway. They're the thought.
Well, history demonstrates that in a more rational culture. Where people are more free, they tend to really rise to the occasion.
It's true.
And in more authoritarian, less free ones, they're less. If selfishness is properly understood, and look,
that's exactly it. Properly understood.
Right. So that's.
But the people who aren't very bright have trouble properly understanding.
And honestly, I think the more intellectual you are, the engineers of the world are the hardest ones to reach.
Oh,
they're the ones they've got their head up their ass so far. Like, I mean, just look at the comments section on here. You'll see a bunch of fucking stubborn neckbeards that just won't fucking budge. But it's actually it's the average Joe out there who I think is more likely to understand this stuff. You just explain to them, say, hey, rational selfishness. Do things for you, but be rational about it. Think about what do you value? What are you hoping to accomplish, and what matters to you, and to a large degree what matters to you is other people, whether it's your family, your friends, your neighbors. You want to have good vibes with them. So I think people are smarter than you think, and especially, again, people have been under a horrible form of education for so long, whether it's at home or at school, where they're just taught not to be rational.
I think individuals are, but I think that people as collectives.
Okay, now you see, this is why you're one of them. You're a collect. You think there's this third entity that is the collective.
No, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's also the phenomenon of the wisdom of crowds. You know, people when brought together, they allow other people to think.
Okay,
for them.
well then.
Now, when I say the collective, I don't. You know.
We can work on your bleak view of humanity, but once again, let's just focus on Sargon, and before we get to could this work to the masses, which I think it can, but even if you want to believe that most people are stupid and irrational and need to be,
come on, they are.
So they need to believe in altruism.
No, I'm not saying that's the answer either.
So what is the answer?
I don't know.
See, you don't have the answers.
You're right.
You ain't got the answers, Kanye
right.
West. You ain't got the answers.
I'm not a prophet.
It's not a matter of prophecy. See, you're still living in this mindset where someone needs to come down from the mountain. See, even though as much as you fancy yourself the atheist spokesman, you still hold on to these images and these religious symbols of prophecy being the source of knowledge. Listen, this stuff makes sense, but listen, okay. Let's put aside the question of are people capable of being rational, which I think they are, and I think they will be increasingly.
Why are there so many irrational ones?
Because we live in a highly irrational culture where reason has been thrown in. You don't even hear that word anymore, in other than a casual sense. The philosophy departments have been a fucking shit show for longer than our great grandparents have been around.
Yeah, you can thank France and Germany for that.
Well, you can also thank Sargon for not pushing back against it.
I am pushing back against it.
Then don't.
Your complaint is that
then
I'm not
don't
perfect.
make these emotional arguments that I just feel like most people couldn't handle the truth.
I don't. It's not that I feel it. I'm pretty certain of it.
You're so defensive. Why would you have your arms crossed if you were certain of it?
I haven't got any.
All right. Well, listen. Okay, then we can revisit the question of.
I'll put my hands behind my head.
We could. There you go. That's good body language. It's like I know I'm right, so I don't even need to give a shit. I'm just getting a tan over here.
No. This is I think a lot of people's problem with Ayn Rand, right? Is it's. I think that you're trying to make things certain that aren't really certain.
Like what?
Like we were talking about, like the capacity of people. You know, I think this varies over time. I think it varies between different groups of people, culture, blah blah blah. Ooh. And so us sitting here saying, right, these are defined lines that are going to work for everyone at all times and all periods. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying I'm not. Maybe I'm not well educated.
Listen. Are most people alive today ever going to fully accept these ideas? Probably not, because people are hard. Once they're at a certain age and once they're influenced by a certain amount of influences, it's very hard. If there is any hope, it's in the Ruckas Nuckas. It's in the future. You know, it's not. It's hard enough to reach. I mean, you're one of the most open-minded people probably that I've ever seen. You know, all things considered. Like many people your age and of your background, whatever, of your place in the world, of your time period, they won't even give this shit a chance. You're very open-minded, and I still can't even get you, like, as far as I'd like.
I think this is why objectivism never really caught on, because I think that smarter people than me will say something like, it's not comprehensive. That's the thing. It's this is the thing. It doesn't cover everything. You know, it doesn't. There are certain things that are outside of its purview, and yet Peikoff will say, "Well, it's a closed system. It's not up for change." And so this is why I don't think I could ever. But maybe I just don't understand it well enough.
Well, like what do you want it to cover that it doesn't?
Well, that's what I mean. And like I said, I don't think I'm well educated on it.
Well, ultimately, all it's saying is be objective. So that in a sense, that is comprehensive, because it just means be objective and put things in their proper context.
Then any postmodernist will just turn around and say, yeah, but objectivity is impossible. So what now?
But it's not.
Yeah, but it is. Oh, you know.
I would say to that I would say to that postmodernist, is that an objective fact that objectivity is impossible?
Oh, nice.
Dude, see, these are not smart. These are not smart people. Okay, if Rucka could fucking take these guys on, don't be afraid of these people.
No, but
Postmodernists are the worst elements of society that have gotten prominence because you're too lazy or unmotivated to challenge them.
Rucka Ali, postmodernists should be put in gas chambers.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
But no, seriously though, it is actually objectively true that people can't completely eradicate their biases.
Is that an objective fact?
Yes.
Or are you biased in saying that?
I don't think I'm biased in saying that. I think that
So you're
I
being,
think it's empirically
so
observed.
you're being objective in saying that.
Well, no. This is what I mean, right? The world isn't entirely black and white. I mean, it's an empirical fact that you will never be able to find a person who is perfectly objective.
About what?
Anything.
Anything?
Yeah.
Is that an objective statement?
I think so.
So you're being perfectly objective.
It's an empirical statement.
You're being perfectly objective in making that statement, then.
Maybe. I think so.
So it is possible.
Well, in their values. This is an observation. This isn't like me putting forward a normative worldview. Like, I mean, like, you know, I can, you know, let's say this is, you know, the color white. I mean, that's an objective statement. You know, there isn't a human on earth who's going to say that's not white. You know, but that's not a value judgment. You know, this is
okay.
And
so what are the types? So people have different values, in other words.
Yes.
Okay. So what's wrong with that?
Well,
I mean, what's
this
unobjective about having different values? Like you value value video games, I value sex with women. We have different values. That doesn't mean,
you know, I'm married, right? Yeah, obviously I don't value sex with women.
Ew.
But no, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, look, it's not the same thing. Empirically saying, look, this is a white thing. People are biased.
Mm-hmm.
These are you know, demonstrable, testable, empirical reality.
Sure.
But that's doesn't mean that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't mean that in the, you know, people's behavior and their values and the things they do, they can't be objective. But that doesn't mean trying to be objective is a bad thing. But you can't act like they are objective. And so you're like, be objective. It's like, well, I'm
not saying
that's not possible.
Be objectivist. I'm
try
saying
to be objective is what you really mean.
To the best of your ability, be objective.
Exactly.
Okay.
But this is the problem. This is the problem that I'm getting. This is the impression that I'm getting from the people who object to the Rash philosophy is that. It takes people as if they could be perfect, and I don't think they can be perfect.
Perfect in what way?
Well, in the way of be objective. But what you mean is try to be objective.
I mean perfectly rational. Perfectly
Again,
objective means
perfectly
taking
rational.
the information that you have and applying it, not evading any of it.
Oh, I agree.
Is that not possible?
Oh, no, I think that's possible, but even then, there's no guarantee that you're going to get perfect rationality.
I mean, you might have
That's
wrong
just gonna be-
information.
Yeah, but you might make a wrong decision. You might have a wrong interpretation. You know,
I mean,
there are
so you
many- there are so
you
many
do the best you
subjective-
can.
Yeah,
But do you reject
absolutely.
science on the same
No,
grounds?
I agree. Do the best you can. Absolutely. That's I'm fully on board with that. But then you can't speak in absolutes of what's perfect, what's objective, what's not. You're doing the best you can, and you've got to remember that you're always doing the best you can. Whereas this is why honestly, like, this is, I think, people's objection to objectivism. But I think we should stop.
What is? What, you still haven't told me what the objection is.
Oh, the fact that it's the common complaint that I hear is that Rand is trying to fit the world to her politics rather than fitting her politics to the world, right? And this,
She's primarily focused on the things that come before politics. She's saying ethics and, of course, metaphysics and epistemology before that. But she's saying the ethics need to be a continuation of epistemology and of metaphysics. She's saying ethics need to be rational, which leads them to be rationally selfish. Rationally. And that, in turn, tends to mean we trade with one another, we respect each other's property, and then politics comes after that. So, no, I don't think... Ayn Rand actually said she wouldn't want to just see capitalism imposed on the world right now in a dictatorial way. She wants to see the thinkers of the world move in that direction, which in turn would lead us to a freer society, a freer government.
Yeah, and I agree, but I don't know. I this is why I said I wanted to write my thoughts out, because it's
more
a messy
than
thing to go through
than writing.
If you haven't thought it through already, and I haven't thought it through in the detail.
I mean,
that we
more than you need to write. Maybe just read.
Oh, I am always reading, but like, you know, if I would want to structure what I was going to argue if I'm going to argue this, because it's complicated and it's probably above my pay grade.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I mean, just observe the mental gymnastics people do to try and not agree with this stuff.
Well, it's the thing. That's the thing. It's not that I don't agree in principle, but I again, like, in the same way that, like, communism is a philosophy for ants, I feel like this is like a system for robots.
Now, well, that's where you're wrong. That's a popular misunderstanding of this philosophy.
Okay, maybe it's my lack of education.
Your emotions and your values, the love that you feel, those are the rewards of life. That's something to work for. Do I seem like a robot, by the way? I think I've more than demonstrated to the world that I've got a sense of humor. You might not find me very funny, but I'm definitely.
Hey,
I'm a lighthearted dude.
Well, like I said, I'm happy to accept that I'm undereducated on this, but these are the. It's not that I have obviously been reading and I haven't been investigating. Yeah. I've been listening to Objectivists, and I think that again, I think the problem is it works for some people but not others. I think there are people, regardless of how we would like them to be and how it might be best to be, that simply are not. They're too emotionalist. They're not really capable of this, and it's because they're human and fallible.
I know you're trying to end the podcast, but let me say
I don't want to end on a I am. But I don't want to end on.
Okay,
like
so let me say this. Listen, again, but it's hard to look at today's world and point at people today that have been so thoroughly molested by irrational influences and say, oh, see, people cannot be irrational. Most people are not independent thinkers, okay? Most people, everyone should be and can be, but most people are not. Yes. And but there's many more independent thinkers today than there were 100,000 years ago, because 100,000 years ago people didn't have time.
No, I don't know if that's true. Listen, and that's the thing. That's the thing. I don't know if that's
people
true.
barely used to even think in the old days. They were just basically living from association to association.
They were certainly thinking, but they were thinking on a more immediate level. They were far less abstract.
In a sense, they
were certainly thinking for themselves.
So in a sense, they were more focused on reality.
I actually think that maybe the problem is actually the luxury and contentment of modern life. Like, for example, being a gaming neckbeard, other people were doing the thinking for me. I was playing video games.
Sure.
Whereas if you're more self-reliant and you're a bushman who's hunting game or something, you don't have the choice.
Not everyone's an intellectual. Period. Some people are fucking doctors or whatever. They benefit from.
Not everyone's an intellectual. Some people are doctors.
Like a medical doctor doesn't need to be a philosopher. He just needs to know.
I think he's calling you out.
He needs to know the philosophy of medicine. Like, he needs to understand science.
Yeah, he needs to know the facts.
Okay, some people are bricklayers.
Yeah.
Okay, but as long as they're rational, I mean, they can reach their full potential with given the tools they have. Look, I'll never be a PhD in fucking science. I'm doing what I hope is the best I can with my life, or hope to. I'm trying to improve myself and doing what I enjoy, what I love. These are my values, right? And same with you.
Yeah.
So it's not that everyone. It's very hard to look at people today and say, like, oh, see, I told you people are irrational.
I'm not suggesting that people don't have the capacity, but the thing is, I can't think of a time in human history where things would have been mostly like you. And even then, I don't want it to be perfect either. Just even that mostly your way and the way you're describing. I think that people are too easily influenced by emotions.
I think the United States in the latter half of the 19th century.
The closest we've come, I suppose.
Was much more free, also much more rational, much more positive and benevolent. People used to voluntarily help each other out all the time if someone was down on his luck or if there was an emergency. And oftentimes the biggest charitable people were the robber barons, the very wealthy. They had a stake in seeing their community survive a hurricane. So I mean,
yeah.
But again, I always have a hard time with historical examples because, like, I want to talk about, let's just talk about ideas first and foremost. Although historical examples can be a great indicator, but let's just really focus on ideas and let's just talk about Sargon. Like,
no. I'm totally with you on that. And I agree that we do need to get down to that. But I don't think you can divorce ideas entirely from people because people are the context in which ideas exist.
Right.
And so you have to accept that people are fallible and emotional and irrational. And not all people at all times, but certainly all people at some times, And so I'm like I said, I'm not saying I'm necessarily educated well enough on this to be able to refute it. I'm just saying I don't think you can just like browbeat people by saying, right, these are the ethics that will fix everything. So I don't think
is there a context in which you would drive off a cliff?
Yeah, maybe.
Then what would be that context?
You're dying of cancer, and I don't want to.
Okay, so that's a rational choice. Yeah. You've said, I value my own happiness, and if I can't live a happy life, I'd rather die now.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're saying like people are necessarily, or all people are sometimes necessarily over emotional. Like they don't have to be. People can be rational, and they will increasingly be so if rationality is upheld. We live in a highly disintegrated time.
Yeah, no. I certainly agree that we should. Be pushing for more sort of self-reliance, more rationality and things like this. But I think it seems that you're demanding an end product, Whereas I think what we need is a process of heading towards that goal.
I'm not demanding anything, and in fact, I don't expect anything. I have been alive long enough to be highly disappointed with. By the way, I'm sitting here trying to convince you that people have potential and they can be great.
Well,
do you know how disappointed I am every day with so many people? I'm not fucking Pollyanna. I'm just saying. I know what's possible because I try to my best of my ability to push myself to what's possible. Okay. You can be rational. You can integrate, abstractions with concretes and really come to understand the world. It is possible. And when I'm in the moments of doubt, I say, I can and will. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, more than I want to talk about how do we get these ideas out into the society. I just like, well, let's just talk about you. Like, what do you disagree about? And if your primary disagreement is that other people won't be able to understand this, I understand your pessimism, but let's worry about that later. If you're supposed to be a rational person, then let's just worry about you. Like, what is it that you can't wrap your mind around, and we can just take it from there.
Okay, well, we'll do this again.
Yeah, and like I said, I hope you're increasingly disillusioned with the people you talk to. I hope the more you talk to the other great thinkers of our time, the more you present to them that cultures are shaped by ideas, that people are driven.
I think that's always
that people are driven by their ethical beliefs, and they just look at you like you're fucking retarded. I hope you increasingly feel lonely and that makes you hungry for more answers, for more truth. I really wish that upon you, my friend.
Oh, I think I've got that regardless whether I want it or not.
So. Yeah, let's hope so.
But anyway, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Everyone, please leave a like, comment. And by the way, we want to know what you think. This is a discussion. Why don't you leave us a comment, leave a like, and donate.
Don't forget to subscribe. Check out my Patreon. It's interesting how I never have to do that in any of my videos.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. The way I like the performative nature of my channel, the mission in action. I expect the people watching me to be rational, self-aware, intelligent people who will act exactly as they feel is right to act.
They think is right.
Yeah, if they want to leave a like, if they feel like they've got something out of my content, they will like. If they think, oh yeah, I want to make sure that this guy continues doing what they're doing, I'll donate $1 a month for Patreon. I don't need to encourage them to
what
do
better model of a rational system than Patreon? People are voluntarily giving...
And YouTube itself, it's fabulous.
Yeah, but specifically Patreon, where people are giving money. Yeah, man. Anyway, because they like you, and you're kind of a fountainhead of your own. You nobody's pushing you to create. Nobody's begging you to do it. It just seems to come naturally to you. You can't wait to make the next video, and that's that's something I recognize.
I've got a good one coming about David Pakman.
There's a saying we have in the hip hop community. Are
you black enough for that?
Real recognize real.
Oh, okay.
You're clearly not only open-minded, but you create a lot of content. That's a great thing. I think in the important ways, you're already living the way that all I'm saying is, here's a green light to keep doing what you're already doing, and just to feel good about it, and never feel any guilt about it. Never feel like you're wasting your time.
That's good, because I never have felt bad about what I'm doing, and I've never felt like I'm wasting my time.
And that's great.
Yeah,
good.
That's good.
And all I'm offering you is an intellectual backup for that, intellectual ammunition for that.
I can see why a lot of people on both the left and right are afraid of objectivism. I can see it's very self-confident. It's very self-confident.
And honestly, like, by the way, and then this goes out. By the way, I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to insult anyone. I mean, I'll fight you, obviously.
And the neckbeards,
right?
And anyone else who gets in your way.
No, but I'm just here to talk. This is my Anita Sarkeesian. I just want to talk. But by the way, people who disagree with this stuff, philosophically, fucking make your voice heard. Challenge, invite Yaron or another objectivist to your college or to somewhere to debate someone who you do agree with, or make a video explaining why Ayn Rand was wrong. The attacks on her, I've just always, as far as I've seen, have pretty much always been on her character, on perceived hypocrisies in her own life. Can we talk about ideas?
I don't care about Rand as a person.
Let's talk about philosophy. Let's talk about ideas. Are we talking about ideas? That's all I'm saying.
Who on earth would have thought that Rucka Ali, the maker of various insulting parody songs of being intellectual.
Well, I will say anyone who sees a thriving career and what seems to be a never-ending stream of recycled offensive comedy would say, oh, there's a guy who's really got his shit together in more ways than one. And also on that topic, Sargon wanted me to ask you all that. I have a song called Sargon. It's on YouTube. If you look up, Rucka, Sargon, whatever, look on my channel. He asked he would like that video to be the number one most viewed Sargon video on YouTube.
That. No, he doesn't want that.
I think your current most viewed video is like 2.5 million last time I checked. I think it's like automatically plays on your channel, which some would call kind of a dirty trick.
It's just my landing video.
Sure. Well,
anyway,
the important thing is what will be the most viewed video. Right now it's at a little over 500,000. We want to see it at like 3 million.
Oh, it's we now.
Well,
it's
Sargon.
Now it's you as
Sargon
well.
asked
this
me.
Is how they get you.
Sargon asked me to ask you. Okay, he's embarrassed. He hates asking you guys for anything because you've already done so much. But he said, please bring this to be the most highly viewed Sargon-related video that there is. It's called Sargon. It perfectly tells the story of Sargon's life. It's fully accurate. It pretty much. And in a poetic way, because I was at the panel with your good friend Anita when she yelled at you in front of everyone, and then we got in my car to drive back to LA, and I said, "So how did your YouTube career get started?" And you said, "Oh, I made a video about Anita." I said, "She made you? That's how fucking poetic is that?" And like nobody even sees that. No one even draws that. This is fucking deep, dude.
I am the monster she's created.
And it's important to Sargon, and to an extent it's important to me that this video be the most highly viewed Sargon-related video. So any way you can get it more views, your little tricks, just fucking get it to that next level. It's apparently not suitable for all advertisers, so this isn't even about money to me. It really just is about the idea that, when people search Anita, and she made this clear at the panel, so when people search Anita Sarkeesian, Sargon's like the first result, which pisses her off. Sargon wants it to be so that when you search Sargon of Akkad, my music video that I made be the first result and the most viewed video. So let's make that happen, guys. We can do this as a team.
For a radical individualist, he sure does a lot of talking for other people, doesn't he?